we've got to get these fender flares done, and I've decided not to make them out of steel. I've decided to go with the fiberglass route, and I've got to create some molds for the fiberglass fender flares. Obviously, you can't buy these anywhere, nowhere at all. Okay, you can get OEM flares for this thing from Junkyard. I think there might be a couple of folks in other countries, not the US, that I know of, that offer an OEM type fender flare and custom make them for you, you know, but it's usually for like the AMG look, you know, like the ML55 type of fender flare, which is not the Lost World Jurassic Park dinosaur chasing machine that this is going to be, okay? Because these tires stick way out. This has a 2-inch spacer, you know, spacing these 16-inch wheels, wrapped in these 29.5-inch tall tires, and so these actually stick out farther than the fender here, than the OEM factory fender. So Car Crap Garage, thank you very much for the info that he provided me when he took a trip to the Stuttgart, Germany Mercedes-Benz manufacturing facility there and visitor center, where they actually have one of these vehicles from the movie on display. I have to squat down like this right here because I do not have a wide angle lens. I got a brand new camera right there. Hope you like the quality. I'm no longer shooting from my iPhone. Now I'm shooting from a brand new Canon M50 Mark II mirrorless camera. Okay, pretty cool. Pretty cool device. The money I made off the town car rebuild, quote, rapid rebuild, went to buy me a new camera. And really and truly, yes, it is for these kind of things, like this build and builds that I do, but mostly because of my daughter. All I needed, or my iPhone was not giving me the distance across the arena when she's horseback riding. She rides English, and so to capture those moments, capture those jumps, because she does show jumping, stuff like that, and hunters and all that whole nine. I'm kind of a show dad now, is what they call it. So I had to find a better camera. I had to have something with some zoom capabilities, and I really wanted that depth of field that I couldn't get from my iPhone. Now, don't get me wrong, my iPhone is fantastic at taking photos, right? And video for that matter. And like, you know, short videos like TikToks and Instagram, YouTube shorts, that kind of thing, works great. Works great. But for actual legitimate use for vlogging and different things, for especially horseback riding and the action-packed stuff there, had to have a different camera. So got me a brand new camera. Problem is right now, if you didn't know, lenses are freaking expensive. Oh my God. Anyways, the lens on it right now is, I think it's a 18 to 55 millimeter, and you know, it's zoomed out as far as it goes, and you can tell that I can't even fit in frame. Not standing up anyways. But I've got a wide angle lens coming, and hopefully that will improve this just a little bit. Right now, we got to get working on these freaking fender flares, custom fender flares. I've decided not to make them out of steel. I'm going to make them out of fiberglass. They stick out a lot. They stick out about 3.5 inches. So I started on it and just kind of tested, playing around with different methods on the other side of creating the molds. And I've pretty much gotten the molds almost where I want them. I ran out of filler, body filler, to get those built up where I want them. And so I've got to do a little bit more shaping on the front one on the passenger side. But for the most part, they're done. Now we can work on this side. And one of the lessons that I learned from doing the other side is I'm going to have to basically repaint that entire side over there. Okay, and now that I'm going to make some of this stuff out of fiberglass, I'm realizing now that I'm not going to have to do as much paint work. So I did a bunch more research on YouTube on folks making fender flares, fender extensions and whatnot. You know, a lot of folks out there making wide body kits, custom wide bodies and stuff like that. And they use this like 3M full tape. And they basically place that full tape on the body panels, and then everything is glued or stuck to that aluminum full tape, which does two things. It allows it to be easily removed, which I don't know how hard it's going to be to remove those molds from the other side once I get done with them. But I would say it's probably not going to be the most fun thing. But the first thing we have to do is cut these fenders. And so one of the things that Car Crack Garage figured out for me by visiting the movie car, I guess it's the Montana. Is it the Montana version? Is it the Santana's the pickup version, and then the Montana is the spare tire top, and then the Fontana, which is what I'm building, is the dome top, right? And from what I figured out from Car Crack Garage is the movie car does not have a lift kit, does not have a body lift. There's nothing done to the suspension at all. It's all OEM stock, 100%. Okay, the way they made it look like it's lifted, okay, they cut the fenders. And so basically what I have determined based on photos, comparing the side photos of my unit here, because this one's still 100% OEM. It is not lifted, it is not body lifted, it is nothing. Okay, right now it is 100% OEM. And back in episode 11, you'll know I took measurements of before and after the tire tire and wheel upgrades, okay? And basically it is like 1.5 inches taller or so, something like that. And so now we can work on these fender flares, but not just any kind of fender flares. They are 100% custom, one-offs, and they're not going to be easy at all, okay? This is work not for the faint of heart here, and obviously this is not my daily driver vehicle, so like I got plenty of time to let this thing sit here in the garage and get this done and not have to worry about having to drive it tomorrow. So so now we can figure out exactly what we need to do. But the first thing we got to do, cut these fenders, okay? And I've determined, and I've made a mark right here. You might be able to faintly see this mark. But I'm basically cutting about an inch off of this fender, okay, front and rear. Basically where the lip of this was. So it's flat right here on this edge, and then right where it starts to roll over is about an inch, and I'm basically just cutting that off right there. And then my fenders, my flares, are about 3.5 inches in the middle right here. They vary though. So it's like 3.5 inches back here, 3.5, and then it starts tapering down because you need about a 1/2 inch, quarter to 1/2 inch space between the door seam, where the door seal right here, and the top of the fender flare. So it definitely starts getting skinnier as you go around, skinnier and skinnier and skinnier. Does the very same on the front side. So the front of the fender flare on the front fender is actually wider, 3.5 inches, and the back part of it is, I don't know, 2 inches maybe, 2 inches, but it all relatively sticks out about the same width. Okay, about 3.5 inches out from the fender. You know, so that's like that far. It's just enough to like capture any rocks or anything thrown from these tires. Those fender flares will stick out enough to capture that. Okay, they'll get there. Now, if you were to just take 3.5 inches and throw it off this OEM fender right here, it would stick out way too far, way too far. But once you cut this inch off right here, and then you got 3.5 inches of fender flare right here, it's completely drastically different. It actually really only sticks out maybe a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch past the tire, which is plenty because it looks OEM. You know, because I don't want the tires like sticking way out, you know, beyond the fender flare. I want it kind of just barely tucked behind that fender flare edge so that it looks as OEM as possible, but also looks badass, right? So what we got to do first is, now I've made this mark, this 1 inch mark. We're going to cut that off first. And the back one is a little tricky because that's part of the body of the vehicle. The inner and outer panels are actually spot welded right along this edge underneath, and then they're seam sealed on the inside. Okay, so kind of a problem back here. The front don't have that problem. You know, that fender is separate, easy to remove, but I leave them in place because I want these molds installed and 100% on the vehicle before actually making the fiberglass fenders out of the molds. So unlike the other side where I have basically sanded paint off and such, this side I'm going to do the aluminum foil tape trick and attach everything to that aluminum foil tape, and hopefully that keeps me bound to do a lot of body work on this side, or a lot of paint work. Hopefully I can save a lot of this. Now some of this, you got like a little paint run right here, or another one right here. You know, I knew I was going to have to do some paint work, but I want to try to keep it to a minimum. In order to do that, we'll wrap this whole side with aluminum foil tape, and we'll go from there. Well, let's go for a little test drive in the Mercedes here real quick. And because I want to get some like before and after shots of the fender flares and extrusions and all that cool stuff. So we'll roll the windows down here. I have air conditioning, but the compressor needs to be replaced. It's just way too loud. But you can tell this thing is relatively quiet. So let's enjoy a little test drive here real quick, and then we'll be back lickety split. So I got a slight weird idle issue occasionally, and then it'll throw a little check engine code. I haven't checked to see what that code is yet. And then I think I also have an intake leak. Yeah, there goes that check engine light. And then it clears up amazingly. Needs a little alignment. It drives really good, considering. Well, here's what it looks like after we got a whole bunch of pieces of foam. And basically what the way I'm cutting them is 3.5 inches wide by 2.5 inches, well, I guess it's 2.5 inches wide by 3.5 inches long. And then basically use a heat gun, take it and line it up, put some glue down there and just stick them on, start stacking them. I got couple little gaps I got to fill in there and there where I kind of got off a little bit and quit going in an arch. But the next thing I need to do is I guess I need to trim this a little bit. Obviously they're all kind of facing down, up or up that way, so which makes the bottom kind of angled and needs to come straight out. So I got to resolve that once I get to that point. But lots of little glue stringies. But I mean, this is sturdy. I mean, it's not going anywhere. But it's ready to pretty much do some trimming. And I got a undercut saw that I'm going to use to try to trim this up a little bit here. And we'll see how it turns out. I'm sure this is not the only layer. It's probably going to require one more layer of foam before we could put filler on it, at least. So let's go ahead and get some of this cut out and see where it leads us. So this stuff is sort of expanding. As you can see, it's we're about even with the tire right there, somewhere in there. So you can see it needs to be, I think it needs to go out just a little more because I want it to look like this other side. So we kind of sneak over here. You can tell I've put another layer of foam right there on top. I've already put some filler on this, but it's obviously going to need some more now because, you know, trying to even up the bottom, make it more flat underneath and under there, and then the top side I want like a little 1/4 inch flat area before it tapers down, and so that's the look I'm going for. But you can see the wheel and tire there. We're probably flat about right there. So you can see you can't see any of the tire through the fender. You can see kind of sticks out there about 1/4 to 1/2 inch or so. And you can see the back one right there. You can see that. And that looks really good. Yeah, that looks really good. So, now let me show you, get over here. And let's see, so we're even with the tire about right there. So you can see, at least on this front edge, it's going to have to come out some more. And as we sneak up, you can just barely, we're like right at the edge of that tire. And I think it needs to come out just a little more. And that's the back there. Looks really good. I think that sticks out far enough. I think that's probably about as far as it needs to sneak out right there to get that. Okay, so yeah, that's probably good right there. The front, no, the front I think needs to come out some more. This one's probably good. The problem back here is the bottom side. So this isn't near tall enough for where it needs to be. It needs to be all the way down to the very edge right here. So I've got, you know, this much to fill in from like the top of my finger up to here. I got to fill all that in. That whole wedge right there, it's got to be filled in so it's nice and flat. So think of my hand as the bottom of the fender. That's how much I got to fill in, and then that's how tall that flare needs to be. Now the front edge is really good. You can see there. Yeah, that looks really good, and then it starts tapering back because the reason why is the fender is relatively flat down here. But then once these foam blocks were glued to the fender up here, you know, it tapers back towards the body. So that's why that is the way it is. So I got a good bit more to fill in back here, but no big deal. We'll get there. It's just going to take a few layers, and then we'll be good to go. So until tomorrow, my friends, have a good night. Well, I'm about tired of working this foam, so I've about sanded through all of the aluminum tape that's protecting the fenders. But I got a general shape there. It don't look as good as the other side right now. This side needs a whole lot of TLC, but, and I don't know, like this side right here, like this side looks awesome. I just need to sand them down real good, and I got to remove all that and fix that. But as far as the fender flares go, they're probably about 75%, you know, and they look really good. I think they stick out the right amount. Then over here, see, these flares are like almost flush with the tires, and the shape looks good, but I'm just not digging it. I'm just not into it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put the filler on and start working filler, because like this needs to come out like this far. But I'm a little irritated, and I probably shouldn't do this because I am irritated with it, because this is like the 10th time I've put foam in here, and it did make this one pretty good. Like this one's, you know, I feel like it's really close to where it needs to be as far as shape. But man, it just needs to stick out a little more. It needs to be about right there. Is about where it needs to be, because you kind of see the edge of the tire. I mean, its fender is like flush with the tire, which is really nice looking, but it needs to stick out like that much more, like a 1/4 inch more. And just, you see how that right there, it kind of comes out, and then it just, and then the little flat part on the edge, like it needs to come out a little more and then come down. But I can't make this part thicker. I mean, that right there is pretty much set. That 1 inch right there all the way around, that's pretty much set, so there's not really much I can do about that. So to heck with it, I'm just gonna go ahead and start throwing filler on there and start working my layers of filler up and start sanding the filler. And hopefully it'll be a little bit easier than this, because every time I put a layer of foam on here, I gotta wait 8 hours. Every time, 8 hours. Layer of foam, sand, 8 hours. Layer of foam, wait 8 hours, sand it. Layer of foam, wait 8 hours, sand it. You know, and so I'm into this like 2 months now. Like 2 months trying to fabricate these freaking fender flares. And I'm learning along the process, you know, kind of trial and error. And so far, I think the spray foam works the best. That pink stuff right there, it works fine. And that idea works too. Man, that pink stuff, man, it's like static electricity. Gets on that stuff when you're sanding it, and it starts getting silly everywhere. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start putting body filler on these flares and see where it gets me. Hopefully it'll get me close to what the other side looks like. I'm hoping, but I'm gonna go ahead and get a layer on both of these real quick here and then call it a day. It's getting late.